Hello and welcome to the show. I'm here on Forza Motorsport 5 with a challenge. The car we have here, the Ferrari 375, is, in my opinion, the trickiest car to drive on Forza 5. It really is an absolute pain in the arse to get around a track because it has no grip or brakes. Mainly the grip though, that's the problem. There is absolutely no rear end grip in this car. It slides around all over the place. It is an incredibly tough car to drive. And this vehicle I have here is the silly car build version of it, which means that it is completely maxed out with as much power as I can get on the car. 595 horsepower in this vehicle. Means there is a lot of power and very little grip. I'm thinking the weight distribution probably doesn't help on this car. 60% of the weight at the front, and of course this is rear-wheel drive. It is not a particularly nice car to drive, in all honesty, and yeah, you will spend much time sideways. However, I was curious, could I actually do anything about it? Could I tune? I mean, I'm not a particularly good tuner. I know a little bit about it. But yeah, I'm not a particularly good tuner. But I was wondering, could I actually make this Ferrari usable? Could I turn it into a car that could actually be driven? Could I make it quicker around the track than the V8 supercar? Now, when I did the silly car build on this, the Ferrari is the bottom of the table, the slowest car we've had around the track, a 1:14.0. V8 supercar, a 1:8.1. It is a long way off the V8 supercar time. But I was curious as to if I could actually tune this vehicle and make it work properly. So I set about spending quite a bit of time fiddling around with the setup on this car to get it to work, and the result is a car that I'm thinking might go fast. I haven't driven these cars at Sebring yet, but I'm hoping that this might go a little bit faster. I had to get, shall we say, quite extreme with the tuning on this car. When it comes to all this stuff here was kind of potluck, not potluck almost, but trial and error with getting it better, and this is what I came up with that I liked. I kept the gearing as quite long in this car. The Sebring is a short track, but I wanted longer gearing. Again, this is all just to try and stop the wheel spin. We need as little wheel spin as possible, so a bit longer gearing can be quite useful. Yeah, I tinkered around with this until I got it right. We had to get quite extreme with, basically we want to stiffen up the front of the car and soften up the rear of the car. That was my plan with this vehicle, and because there is a lot of weight over the front, we can kind of get away with doing this. And again, the same with the springs, and again, fiddling around with the damping. Don't want to get too extreme with the damping, but yeah, this did the trick. I had no bugger all about tuning the differentials on these cars. I put the rear acceleration to 50%, and that felt quite nice, so I left it there and didn't touch it again because I didn't want to bugger it up. Yeah, that worked for me. It's all about with this car is trying to stop it wheel spinning and trying to stop it oversteering, and it is a much better car to drive. How well it does at Sebring, I don't know. I don't know at all. There are a couple of very scary corners on this track that are sort of the best cars can be flat out around them, but a lot of cars can't, well, especially the silly car builds, can't be flat out around them. I mean, you wouldn't even consider being flat out around it. I think it was probably sideways and scary in the Ferrari before. Now, I very highly doubt it will be flat out, but maybe the Ferrari is good enough. I don't. I have no idea. I'm hoping it is, or hoping at least it's good enough to go quickly. Target time is a 1:08.1, and I've got to try and get that within 5 laps with the Ferrari. Now, as much I can do all the tuning I like to it, it's still got brakes made of paper mache. They are terrible. These are one of the worst brakes I've had on any car. It does not slow down in the slightest. So, got to brake early, but already, look at this, we can go round a corner. Okay, we're not quite flat out, but we can go round a corner without oversteering. Oh god, but we can't stop. We can't stop into the corner. We can actually get around said corner. I mean, you could be as cautious as you like with this with the standard version of this car, if you like, and you would not be able to have it this well behaved. It just doesn't do it. I was amazed just how much nicer I could make this car with my very limited knowledge of tuning and reading the little description box that comes up on the side of the when you're tuning the car of what kind of roughly what to do. And it's now sort of, well, don't attack the curves. Don't go over the curves, that's silly. It's now sort of usable. Look at it, it's round corners without being sideways. I'm not going to be flat out on the opening lap. We're not far off being flat out, though. Look at that. I had a little lift on the way in, just because I don't trust it, and then we're going to have to brake incredibly early. Please slow down. There we go. I'm not sure if this car has drum brakes on it. I don't think it does, but it could do. It would explain explain a lot. Even with the upgraded brakes, it still doesn't stop. Again, we are just a tiny little lift. Tiny little... Oh, please stop. Please stop. Please stop. Into that corner. Yeah, grass and this car do not get along. They still don't like each other, although that could be said about any vehicle, really. On here, put a wheel on the grass, especially in a braking zone, and you're probably going to go round in a circle. Now, we're going to be nice and behaved through here. It's a much easier car to drive. It's not an easy car to drive. It is a lot easier than it was. It's still quite oversteery. It still spins the wheels up very easily. You can see on the little gauge thing showing how much throttle I'm using. I'm still having to be quite careful with this car, but you would with any 550 horsepower, or most 550 horsepower rear-wheel drive cars. You're going to have to be careful with them. It's still not quite got it flat out the whole way around that corner. We've done a 110.1. It's already 4 seconds faster. 4 seconds faster than it was before. The 1 minute 8.1 is the target I would kind of like to beat. Could we really go quicker than a V8 supercar? In this, I'm going to have to be very brave if we are going to do it. No, I still can't quite be flat out there. I think the brakes are what will probably let this car down at the end of the day. It doesn't quite have the stopping force. And of course it is made worse by the fact that I can now go quicker through these corners. I can carry much more corner speed than I could before. Whoa, and then slow down into this one. Yeah, but I'm going much faster into all of the corners now, so I've got to brake even earlier with this car. Yeah, it takes a little bit of getting used to, that's for sure. Right, this is, what, 30 PI less than a V8 supercar, so maybe that target time is a little bit too much for the for the Ferrari. I'm going to give it a go. Right, onto the long straight. How brave dare I be through here? It's still just wanting to get away a little bit. It's almost flat out. That's better. That is better than most of the cars that I've had in the silly car builds, though. Very few cars have made it flat out through there. And yeah, this is just on the edge. Just on the edge of being flat out. Whoa! He can still get away from you if you aren't careful. And again, through this corner. Oh, it's almost. If it does start sliding, though, it is a lot more controllable now. If it does start getting out of shape, it's a lot more controllable than it once was. I can catch it a bit better. I'm trying to get as much speed out of the car as I dare. I'm not sure that I can get too much more. Come on, get around here. Yeah, it's still not a quick. I wouldn't choose this as a class of, well, a car for any class of racing, unless it was the only choice of vehicle. I'm not going to be building one of these, as they just don't have enough grip and the brakes are terrible on them to be a proper racing car. But yeah, this is a lot better. I really want to be flat out around here, but I just can't quite do it. Again, I'm just having to have little lifts here and there as it wants to start sliding around. A 110.0 as I come onto my final lap with the Ferrari. Can I go any quicker? I don't know. I'm going to have to be quick out of here. It's still wanting to escape. Managed to catch it. Can we do it? No, I'm having a little lift again. Oh, it's sideways. Oh, we're on for a quick lap, though. That is a very quick first sector from the Ferrari, and then he easy does it through here. Still got you can't just boot it out of the corners. It's still a classic Ferrari race car. You got to take it easy through some of these. Right, slow it down for the next one. It's wanting to go sideways under braking. That's never fun. Up towards this next corner. Don't get carried away, because I can now actually use some of the power out of the corner, and also don't attack the curbs too much. Just about got away with that one. We are absolutely flying on this final lap for the Ferrari. Come on, use the speed as we come onto the straight. But it's a very light car. Acceleration should be good. I just can't quite put the power down. We're going for it. God, that's still terrifying. It's across the line. It's a 1 minute 9.0. A second off a V8 supercar around the Sebring track. That is not bad at all. From From the most undrivable car in the game, it is now only a second slower around Sebring than a V8 supercar. That is pretty... I'm pretty damn pleased with this car, in all honesty. I didn't think it was going to quite go that quick. That is, 5 seconds quicker than it went before. Not an easy car to drive still. I mean, if this had the same brakes as the V8 supercar, it would have gone faster. I have no doubt about that. It's the brakes that really let this thing down. You got to brake so early. At least with this tune on. I'll stick these tunes on the share thing so you can have a go with it yourself. It's still not an easy car to drive. It's still quite oversteery, but it's a lot more controllable. I'm pleased with that. I can kind of tune... I've slightly tuned the undrivable Ferrari. But this is not the only car that I had a go with. Yes, the Ferrari is probably the most difficult to drive, but there have been plenty of other cars that are equally silly. And my next vehicle is the 205 T16. A car that is looks quite frankly stupid. It has the craziest body kit that you will see on pretty much any car on Forza 5, and it's also very difficult to drive for slightly different reasons than the Ferrari. The difficulty with the Peugeot is that there is a very strange balance to the car. The front of the car has an awful lot of grip in the Peugeot, and it has an awful lot of traction out of the corners because it's mid-engined rear-wheel drive, a lot of weight over the back of the car, has great traction out of the corners. However, the rear end doesn't actually have very much grip at all, which means you get a very oversteery car, and it's not on-power oversteer like you get with a Ferrari, it's just oversteer through the corners. It's a very, very difficult car to drive because it is so unbalanced, which means that my tuning was a lot more difficult, I found. Strangely, despite the Peugeot being technically the quicker of the two cars, it was an awful lot more difficult to tune the Peugeot. The weight distribution on this car didn't help either. We'll just go in here, there we go. 45% weight distribution over the front, so the car is pretty much rear heavy, and the problem is, to try and cancel out the oversteer, I want to soften the rear of the car, stiffen up the front, same as I did with the Ferrari. But when you soften the rear of the Peugeot, because all the weight is over the rear, it makes the car lift up its front wheels through the corners, and that is undrivable doing that. So you can't really soften up the rear of the car in the same way, so I couldn't be as extreme with the tuning of this car, if you like. Again, gear ratios are a bit on the longer side. These gear ratios are quite nice for the car. It has very good traction off the line and traction out of the corners. That's not the problem with this car. Again, trial and error with all of this stuff, finding settings that I liked for the vehicle. And when it came to the anti-roll bars and the springs, again, I had to stiffen up the rear a little bit just to stop the car from going on three wheels through the corners because it didn't work doing that. Again, fairly similar stuff I did with the damping on this one. I left the differential the same because it's not putting the power down that's the problem with this car. That isn't the issue. It's the whole balance of the thing. Now, I'm sure there are probably people out there who could fiddle around and do a much better job than I did with this stuff, but this sort of thing worked. However, I did have to make one adjustment to the car, and that was a slightly strange one possibly, and that was reducing the front tyre widths. Now, in theory, having bigger front tyres will give the car more grip, which yes, they will do that. However, the front of the car doesn't need any more grip on here. The front's got far too much grip, so I reduced them. If I keep them at this tyre width, I couldn't get the car to work properly for whatever reason. Well, I could, tell a lie. The track I was testing on, I could get the car to work. I went a second quicker by having smaller front tyres because it made the car a little bit more balanced, made it nicer to drive, made it easier to drive, like this. Slightly strange, possibly, but it did the trick. By cutting down on the front. I mean, you will probably lose a little bit of braking performance because a lot of the braking is done through the front of the car. So yeah, maybe I'll lose a small amount of braking performance, but I'll take that because overall it feels better to drive and a hell of a lot better than it did. Yeah, this was all about trying to get the front and the rear to be much better balanced, whereas the Ferrari was about trying to stop the damn thing from sliding every time you used a millimetre of power. So yeah, this one, I mean, this is a quick car. In theory, it has great traction out of the corners, and it is a higher PI than the V8 supercar. I think this car's lap time here, it was around a 110, 111 mark. Potential to go quicker than the V8 supercar, or shall we say a more realistic potential to go quicker than the V8 supercar with the Peugeot. It's still going to be quite difficult. This is still not the nicest car to drive. It is the funniest looking of cars, but it is not the nicest car to drive. I think there is an inherent amount of short wheelbase, an awful lot of power, rear-wheel drive is not the best solution for twitchiness. This tends to create twitchy cars. Yeah, I think there is an inherent... You can't completely fix all of that. Or certainly I can't anyway. So yeah, it is still a little bit on the twitchy side. And I have to say, this is one of the weirder cars that I've had to drive. Brakes are also not fantastic on the Peugeot. The brakes are... They're better. They're certainly better than the Ferrari. They're still not amazing. I mean, this is not as light as I was expecting. It's £2,700, which for a small hatchback with full-on racing parts and weight reduction. Admittedly, I suspect a lot of the weight is the wing, but it's still that's still a lot of weight for a car with full racing parts, full weight reduction, and so on. That's quite heavy for a tiny little car like this one. Sometimes weight can be a good thing. In all honesty, some of the fastest cars we've had around these tracks have been on the slightly heavier side. It makes them a little bit more planted. This is not planted. Even with my adjustments on this car, it will still slide. It will still oversteer, but it is better. It's a lot more controllable as well when it does oversteer. First lap has got, from a standing start, we're pretty much as quick as the car was before, which and that wasn't even a particularly good first lap, so I'll take that one. You still got to be very careful with this. There we be. I'm still not trusting it enough to be flat. I was wise not to trust it enough to be flat out through there, as it did start to slide. It is also a slightly weird one. In the way you can still feel it wants to lift up onto three wheels. It doesn't quite do that, but it does want to through a lot of these corners, and that was the big fight to try and stop it from doing that. Please get off the curb, thank you. It doesn't like curbs either. It's really not a fan of them. We've overshot completely. Also, I think just overshooting that corner reminds me, part of the reason why it feels perhaps not quite so good on the brakes is that we're now approaching corners a lot faster, since we can actually carry corner speed in this. So that does play a bit of a factor. Now, can we be... We're not... no, we're not quite. Again, we're not... It's going to be very similar to the Ferrari. It's just on the edge of being flat out. Good God, that was a quick lap. A 1.7.3. We're not going to stop. I was busy looking at the lap thing. Bugger it, I've fallen off. A 7.3. We have gone 0.7 of a second quicker than a V8 supercar on a second lap with this. Okay, this is quite quick now. Well, I say quite quick. It's a lot better than it was. It's still not my... Certainly wouldn't be my choice of S1 class car. Oh, we've buggered that one up as well, haven't we? Oh, pushing it a little bit too hard into there. It's still going to slide. I mean, we've got 875 horsepower in this car. I think any rear-wheel drive car with this much power is going to slide about if you aren't careful with it, and especially one with a shorter wheelbase as this. But it's, when you can see, it's so much nicer through these corners. I'm not having the same constant fight that I did with it before. Right, we got a couple more laps. Can we get into the 1:06? I would think we probably could with the Peugeot. 1:06 would be quite impressive. I mean, that's getting up there towards some of the... I think it was a Lotus Esprit. Got into the 1:06s. A few cars have got into the ones, not many. Not many city car builds have done 1:06s around here. Right, try and slow you down for the first corner. There we go. The inside curb is not as bad as I thought it was going to be. It's this one here in the next corner I've got to be careful with. I don't want to touch the curb there. That can cause all sorts of problems, and then it's not quite. It's not quite flat out through there. I mean, the downside with the way that I've built these now, these cars are quite understeery through the higher speed corners. That's me trying to try and cancel out the oversteer is going to have that effect on them. So yeah, they're not really the ideal cars for S1 racing. Ooh, they're still a bit fiddly to drive. It really, if it gets caught on a curb, it can kind of get sucked along and you just can't get the damn car off the curb. Okay, can we be... I think we're going to have one more lap to go quickly because I've just had a big moment through this final corner. Okay, one more lap for the Peugeot to go into the 1.6s. It's almost, so close to being flat out, but not quite around that corner. Right, jump on the brakes. That's actually not a bad lap considering I fluffed up a couple of corners. Okay, come on then Peugeot, neatly around turn 1. We wasted a little bit of time on the exit, and then we get a bit of a slide. Still fighting the oversteer on here. I don't trust you. We're not going to go too ludicrous through that corner. Or we're a little bit down. We're going to have to fly through this next part of the lap. That was good through there, though. This is where the Peugeot was really bad beforehand. It's much nicer. We're a little bit of oversteer on the exit as I try and use some more power. But yeah, the Peugeot could barely take that corner. Previously, it was horribly oversteery through there. But now it's just slightly oversteery when you try and use a bunch of power. Again, turning into this next one. A little bit of understeer coming from the car. We are up on the split time. This is looking good if I don't throw it all away through the final corner. Much neater through there. We didn't have to turn in twice to it. And now just the run towards the finish line. How fast dare I go around this kink? Oh, it tried to get away from me towards the line. Oh, we lost it on the final sector. 1 minute 7.3 from the Peugeot. I do think that could get into the 1.6s. I mean, that's just gone quicker. It's not quite as quick as a Jaguar E-Type. Jaguar E-Type did a 1.7.0. But that is not bad from the Peugeot that was nigh undrivable beforehand. Yeah, I'm quite pleased with how quickly these cars have gone. The Peugeot has gone quicker than a V8 supercar. I think it's 3 or 4 seconds quicker for this. I think about 3 seconds quicker for the Peugeot, and we shaved almost 6 seconds off time for the 5 seconds. Sorry, time for the Ferrari. The cars work. They're still not the easiest of vehicles to drive, but they are a hell of a lot better than they were. Yeah, I'm really pleased with how much time I've managed to make them go quicker by. However, that is it for this video, guys. These cars, I'll put both of these tunes up on the share if you want to have a go with them. Go with them yourself and see if you can do better with me and try and scare yourself silly with some barely drivable cars. However, thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.